What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first video in my new series dedicated to DraftKings cash games. I am super stoked to be digging in to a real slate of NFL football. Football is on tonight. This video is being filmed Thursday morning. It'll be out Thursday afternoon, and every Thursday afternoon for the next 16 to 17 weeks. Hell, we might even go into the playoffs if you guys enjoy this content. So we'll see how that goes. But, you can expect a new video from me regarding DraftKings cash games every Thursday. And they'll basically have the same format, which you will find in this video and going forward. So I'm going to go position by position and sort of break down the players that I think are viable for cash games into tiers. So we'll see how that goes. The purpose of this video is to give you an initial look at players that you can consider viable for a cash game pool, right? So, there are definitely good players that aren't on this list and I like for GPPs, but I would not consider for cash. So if you see some players missing, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily, bad tournament plays, but I'm really strictly looking at cash game viability in this series, and the prices are all DraftKings based. DraftKings is primarily where I play, so that's what I'm going to be talking about. It's what I have the most expertise and winning track record in. So I want to give good actionable information that I myself play by. I play my picks. This isn't just touting names or anything like that. So let's get right into it. I'm super stoked to be talking about Week 1 NFL football. So note, this video is only covering Week 1 main slate. I'm not going to be talking about Sunday night football or Monday or Thursday. So this is really just 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. games on Week 1, the main slate on DraftKings. I'd also like to remind people that if you want to see a follow-up Sunday morning, follow me on Twitter at Ben Hover. You can see the @ right under me, and I am going to be updating this video Twitter exclusive on every Sunday morning. So it's a good reason to follow me. But let's get right into it and talk about quarterbacks. So these are my quarterback tiers for Week 1, and right off the bat, I've got two guys in my top tier, Carson Wentz and Dak Prescott. Now, Carson Wentz, he's popping in just about any type of projection model that you'll find, and for good reason. The Eagles are tied with the Chiefs for the highest implied team total on the main slate. Vegas has them at 27.5 points. In terms of the Eagle, they're 10-point home favorites, and Carson Wentz could be on the best offense that he's ever been on. He's fully recovered at this point. Nick Foles is gone. They've added a ton of good skill position players to this team in terms of Miles Sanders, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and, they're bringing back, obviously, Ertz, Alshon Jeffrey, and should have Dallas Goedert in a red zone role, producing with this team. My main concern, if there is a concern with Wentz, I think he's definitely one of the most safe options to at least 3x, should potentially 4x his value. Where I'm worried is that, the Redskins' offensive line especially is terrible, and it's a terrible mismatch with one of the strengths of the Eagles and their D-line. So I could see this game, getting really out of control for Washington early, and the Eagles sort of pounding the rock the second half with Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders. So, we might enter a situation where, the team does put up 27 or so points, but it's coming from running backs in the second half because they've squarely got the game in their hands. Dak Prescott, who I've also gotten this tier with Carson Wentz, is going to go overlooked this week. I don't really think he's on people's radar in terms of cash or GPPs for that matter, but I think he's going to be definitely one of the best plays on this slate. He's 5,900, so you're getting a quarterback sub 6K. We like that. And he's got the fourth highest implied team total on the main slate, 26.5. That's higher than the Rams, the Panthers, the Bucks, Jameis Winston. So there's a lot to like about Dak. Amari Cooper, he's healthy. He's going to play. Zeke is back, and Zeke is potentially on a snap count, which I actually think increases Dak's rushing upside. I think it increases the likelihood that they run Dak at the goal line, and just slightly increases his touchdown equity in the run game. Vegas has Dallas scoring quite a few points, and I agree with that. Agree with that take. I think that the Giants are outmatched. But at the same time, Ingram, Shepard, Barkley, they could keep up with Dallas, which I think would keep this very interesting for Prescott. Honestly, I think the Giants have a better chance of keeping up with the Cowboys than the Redskins do with the Eagles, which, might have me leaning Dak when it's all said and done. Now let's talk about my third tier. I've got Cam Newton all by himself here. He's 6,500 on DraftKings. We've got 3 games on the main slate that are projected to go over 50 points. Cam is the home quarterback in one of them and in the game that I think has the highest shootout potential. The reason that he is not in the top tier for me, because very little separates these guys in my opinion, it's just a question of, how much are the Panthers going to use him? Because, he's been in a walking boot. He's out now, obviously, but I'm not sure if they're going to be hesitant to run with him. Is he fully healthy? Could he get injured again and destroy our slate? Possibly. I think he has a higher, upside to be injured and miss snaps than any of these other guys. That's why he's in the third tier. But all in all, he's one of my favorite options. I think he's got an incredibly high floor, and I think that this game could definitely shoot out. He's home. Nothing to dislike really about Cam. So moving on to my last tier in terms of quarterbacks. I've got 2 guys down here, 2 guys that I think are pretty similar in that they're both going to be 2 of the best quarterbacks this year. I've got Baker Mayfield, who's 6,400, and Patrick Mahomes, 7,200 in tier 3 for quarterbacks. Now, Mayfield first. The over-under on this game is relatively low compared to some of these others that we're discussing. It's only 45 points, and I think that's right, to be honest, although I would say that the Browns might score more than Vegas is expecting. They've only got the Browns favored by 5.5 points. I would expect the Browns to actually win this game pretty handily, especially when you look at the offense and defensive lines of these teams. Yes, neither team has a good offensive line, but the D-line on the Browns is just nasty. I mean, Myles Garrett, Ogunjobi, Richardson, Olivier Vernon, like these guys are next level, and without Taylor Lewan, I would just expect them to be putting this Browns offense in great positions all game. The only thing that really has me hesitant about Mayfield is that, Nick Chubb to me is, as we'll get into in a minute, a top tier player, almost a cash lock for me. So I don't know if I want to play both of these guys. I don't know how much receiving equity Nick Chubb has, contrary to what some people might think after the departure of Duke Johnson. But, I think that Nick Chubb is going to smash in this spot, and Baker Mayfield might lose some touchdowns, just the Chubb on the ground. That being said, I could definitely see Mayfield being right at the top of my list in tournaments. Still under consideration for cash, though. And lastly, Patrick Mahomes. I think that he might still be the best raw projection. Yes, the matchup is not as good as some of these other guys, but, I don't really think Mahomes is, damaged by matchup. I mean, he threw for over 300 yards in this matchup last year against the Jags. Yes, he is 7,200, but we are not really starving for salary whatsoever in this week one where there is so much value out there. That being said, I don't know. Like we said, Mahomes has the same implied team total, 27.5 as Carson Wentz does, and he's 1,500 more expensive. I just don't see the necessity really to spend up for Mahomes. That being said, I mean, he's a fine play, and in my initial cash game lineup that I built earlier this week, I did have Mahomes in there just because I didn't really know what to do with all this extra salary. And if you want to just lock up that position, go for it. I just think that you'd be better off taking one of these Prescott, Wentz guys and then using that salary elsewhere. But yeah, Mahomes is as safe as they come, so he's always going to be in cash consideration. Now, let's move on to running back. The running back tiers this week are a little bit, broken up. I've got basically, let's see, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 8 guys in 4 tiers, 2 players per tier, and that's because I am looking at a lot of these guys in a very similar way. Now, my top tier is going to consist of Nick Chubb and Dalvin Cook. Now, Chubb first, I just talked about it. The D-line I expect of the Browns to put The Browns offense in a great position multiple times throughout this game. Nick Chubb is an absolute stud. If you are into redraft or best ball, this guy has basically moved up to a top 6 pick in all formats. And I mean, he's not going there in terms of DraftKings pricing. He's solidly below all these other guys. He's over 2K less than Christian McCaffrey. His receiving equity is definitely lower, but I mean, his touchdown upside is as high as anybody on the slate. We know Duke Johnson is gone. Dontrell Hilliard has arrived. I don't know how much upside Chubb has in the receiving game. I don't really expect his receiving work to go up that much, especially as much as some people seem to think it will. Especially in this matchup where I think the Browns will win this game pretty easily. So, I guess we'll see about that. That being said, I mean, 6,400 home favorite. I think Vegas is actually underrating just how much of a favorite the Browns are. So if this game, just sort of gets out of control, I think Nick Chubb is just going to feast. And I mean, the Titans D-line, it's not bad by any stretch. It's probably one of the strengths of their roster, but I mean, I'm just not worried. Nick Chubb is elite to me, and without Duke Johnson there, smash spot in cash. Dalvin Cook, who is also in this tier, I would expect to be the highest owned player on this slate. There's so much buzz around Cook. And, this week specifically, I think that it's totally justified. I mean, it's a well-known fact that the Falcons have not been able to stop running backs, on the ground or through the air for years now. And I don't know why is this year going to be different. They're certainly healthier than they were last year, but I don't know how much that really matters. Dalvin is a 3-down back. He's a home favorite. He's on a run first team, and he's facing a team with the offensive capabilities to keep this game close, keep the Vikings passing, which is good for Dalvin, or, if they run away with this game, that's also good for Dalvin. One thing that I think is, worth bringing up is that Alexander Madison has almost solidified himself in this Latavius Murray role. I don't expect Dalvin to get 100% of the touches in this backfield. I think that Madison will eat away at him slightly, but I just think that, Dalvin's the money play here. If he were a little bit more expensive, maybe you could make a case for fading him in favor of some of these other guys I'm about to talk about. But at 6K, he's wildly underpriced in a good matchup. And, I would expect him to be the highest owned player in cash and most likely GPPs as well. Now, let's move on to the second tier. Now, these two guys that I have in my second tier of running backs, Chris Carson and Leonard Fournette, I think that arguably they are just as good as the two guys above them. There's a slight difference, and I guess that, that's just the projection. So with Chris Carson, he's 5,700. He's got the third highest team total on the main slate with the Seahawks. He's a 10-point home favorite. So, Vegas has this as a, awesome smash spot, a perfect game script for a guy like Chris Carson. Now, the Seahawks and people who follow them have speculated that he will get more receiving work this year than he's gotten in the past. I would expect that to potentially be true. Carson solidified himself above Penny in this backfield at 5,700. He is a great play. And, much for the same reason that I like Chubb against the Titans, this Bengals team I expect to be bad, right up there with the Dolphins in contention for the number 1 pick next year. Their line is so bad. I would expect Seattle with a healthy Ziggy Ansah and Jadeveon Clowney to just be in that, that backfield all day, just sacking Dalton all day long and putting Chris Carson in great scoring position. He's 5,700, could have a higher role in the passing game. Lock and load Chris Carson. I love that play. And Leonard Fournette, the same thing. Now, all these teams keep boosting these guys that have historically not been pass catchers. And the same is true of Leonard Fournette. He caught 3 balls from Nick Foles in the preseason. He has never been that guy before in the NFL, but maybe he will now. It's a new offense, new quarterback in Jacksonville. And, the thing about Fournette is that he is at home facing the Chiefs. So, he's a home running back, underdog. But, with Mahomes coming to town, I think that, Fournette is almost locked in to have a great role in this game, whether they're behind and throwing to Fournette. Alfred Blue is on IR, so there's not really anybody except for the rookie, Raquel Armstead, I think, that, could really even contest Fournette for snaps. If the defense works out, Fournette will be in a good game script. If not, I think he'll get more passing work than we've seen in the past. And I'm ready to embrace Leonard Fournette in this matchup at 6,100. The only reason he is not in the top tier is just because we have not yet seen him have this cash game role. So it's a bit of speculation, although it's speculation I'm very confident in. So he is right there in that top tier and very much in consideration for me in terms of cash games and GPPs. In the next tier, I've got the two most expensive guys that I'm considering for cash games in Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley. McCaffrey pretty much run back all the reasons that I liked Cam for. I think that this game has a ton of shootout potential. He's at home. It's over 50 points in terms of a Vegas projection. And McCaffrey was a beast last year. Same with Saquon. Both of these guys have a ton of rushing, receiving upside, all of that. With McCaffrey, the reason that he is in this tier, not the above tier, is I just don't think you need to go there. I think that in this week you can build a really good, solid, balanced lineup without really needing to get safety, for these high-priced guys. Yes, obviously McCaffrey is his point projection higher than Chris Carson's, yes, but he's also $3K more expensive, and I just think that you can use that $3K to build a more balanced lineup and an all-around higher floor, higher ceiling combo. McCaffrey, great play, love him, but I just don't see necessarily the need to go with this tier of guys, which is why I have them in the third tier despite having such high point projections. Basically the same thing with Barkley. I'm not super high on Barkley, but I put him in this tier just because McCaffrey is there, and I think that they both offer very similar floors, extremely high floors, the highest floors on the slate, arguably. It's just I don't think you need to go there. In terms of cash. That's why they're low on this list. And then finally, moving down to the last tier of running backs, I've got Kerryon Johnson, 5,800 on the road against Arizona, and Austin Eckler, 5,500 hosting the Andrew Luckless Colts. Now, these guys, I'm expecting to have big weeks, both of them, but they are just not as safe as some of these other options. Kerryon Johnson, I think, got a huge off-season boost once Theo Riddick got cut. He should get more receiving work. He was already getting receiving work. I would be shocked if he finished the year with under 50 receptions. That being said, throughout the preseason, the Lions showed an affinity for C.J. Anderson on third downs. They love Ty Johnson, a guy they drafted this year, I think, in that Theo Riddick role. That being said, I think that the Cardinals are a terrible run defense. I think their offensive line is horrific, and that the Lions are going to feast on Kyler Murray this week, putting Kerryon in a great position. It's just, you can't trust him like these other guys. There's just too much of, an opportunity for C.J. Anderson to come in at the 2-yard line and vulture him. And really, that's the same reason that Austin Eckler's in this tier. Any other week, 5,500, a guy with Eckler's role, I think would be a stone lock, but not this week, especially not with their head coach doubling down this morning on Thursday morning and saying that, it's always been a committee with Eckler and Justin Jackson, and it's going to continue to be. So that's the thing. I mean, these guys are great plays. I think that, honestly, both of their floors are relatively high. Decent bets to 3x, no doubt about it, but they're just not as safe to me as these other guys, and there's too much opportunity for them to have goal line situations vultured or just be, supplanted by guys on their own team. So I think they're great plays, but I probably will not make it to them in cash. Let's move on to wide receiver. Now, wide receiver is going to be the largest group of players. Obviously we're starting 3 of them, maybe 4 in cash, probably 3. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to start with D.D. Westbrook in my first tier. That might be shocking to some people. He doesn't have overly high projected ownership in the sources I'm looking at. I'm not sure if he's on everybody else's cash rater, but he's definitely on mine at 4,800. How could you not play D.D. Westbrook? I mean, we're talking about a guy who is the clear-cut number 1 on Jacksonville. Now, yes, it's a new quarterback and a new system. So, is there a bit of concern there? Potentially. But I think it's pretty clear if you've been paying attention that Westbrook is going to dominate this team, especially in the slot. And, he played almost 90% of his snaps in the slot last year. And chief slot corner Kendall Fuller was absolutely abysmal in coverage, allowing the most yards and receptions in the entire league to the slot. So I think that Westbrook, I'm not sure how sticky that is in terms of will the Chiefs still be terrible in the slot? Probably. And Westbrook should eat there. I mean, he caught 7 out of 10 Nick Foles passes in the preseason. So, it's clear that Foles has a, infatuation with this guy. He's cheap. I think he's the best salary option at wide receiver in the board that you can trust in cash games. Now, the second tier of guys I have, ranging from 5,800 to 6,200, right all in that same price range. Got Tyler Boyd, 5,800, Tyler Lockett, 6K, and Chris Godwin, 6,200. Now, all three of these guys would be great in your lineup. It's sort of a pick your poison situation. With Tyler Lockett, he is in an incredible matchup. The slot corner for the Bengals, Darqueze Dennard, is on the PUP list to start the season. He will be facing some guy named B.W. Webb. And if memory serves me correct, that's the guy who stole all that money in the plane and Prison Break. Or maybe not. I'm going on a tangent. Lockett is going to, command such a high target share in this Seattle team. Jerron Brown re-signed with the team after being cut initially. So he'll be starting along with Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf practiced on Wednesday. He's on track to play, although Pete Carroll has said that he will potentially be on a snap count to start the year. So we'll see how that goes. But, Lockett has plenty of target upside. He's one of the most efficient wide receivers in the NFL. And my only concern with him compared to these other two guys is that, the Seahawks just basically blow the Bengals out and don't need to pass much in the second half. So I think that is a slight concern with Lockett, which might make me lean more GPP and choose these other two guys because, the projections are so close that I think, that might be the optimal choice. But we'll see. Tyler Boyd in the same game is going to be, in a great spot. Going by the same projected game script, Tyler Lockett, who could be leaned off passes, I think Boyd is going to get more passes. AJ Green still not back. The only other starting wide receiver worth anything on the Bengals is undrafted rookie free agent Damian Willis, who is min priced 3K on DraftKings. Not in consideration. We don't need to go there, but Boyd should eat in the slot. Seattle lost their slot corner that they had last year, Justin Coleman, who went to the Lions. And, their new slot corner, Perry Nickerson, was signed on September 1st, 5 days ago. This guy is not going to be able to cover Tyler Boyd. He's one of the better slot receivers in the NFL. I think that he's going to be a pivotal part of this team. He is going to play the Cooper Kupp role in Zach Taylor's offense. I think you can lock him in, to be honest. And Chris Godwin, one of the most hyped players this entire offseason. I don't really need to say too much about him. He's a red zone threat. He's going to play in the slot, outside, everywhere, all over the lineup. Bruce Arians said he's never coming off the field. This is a guy who at 6,200 right now I think could easily be in the 7K range. And we could be looking at a situation last year where it's like a 1A and 1B with Mike Evans, opposed to a clear-cut 1 and 2. I think you're getting a nice early season discount on Godwin, even though he is all the way up to 6,200. Now, moving on to tier 3 for wide receivers, I have Julio Jones and Mike Evans. Again, much like the Barkley and McCaffrey tier, I think that these guys are very projectable for high point totals. It's just a matter of whether or not you want to spend the salary for them going all the way up. Julio Jones is going to be matched up against Xavier Rhodes for the most part, and Xavier Rhodes has a ton of name value. People think of the roads are closed or whatever with Xavier Rhodes with the Vikings. That being said, he finished as PFF's number 108 corner out of 123. Last year Rhodes was not good. He just wasn't. And I don't think that in a dome where Julio's splits are clearly, in favor of Julio, is really going to be able to hold the candle to one of the best wide receivers in the league. I expect Julio to eat this week. He should be a mainstay of most lineups. And Mike Evans for the same reasons as Chris Godwin. The Bucs are going to be passing a ton. They should be all over this game. I love Evans. I just have him here for pure point projection, although I think in cash I would probably lead Godwin just because I don't really think that Evans, target projection is much higher than Godwin's, and, the price difference of 1,700 is significant. So moving on to tier number 4, I've got two guys in this tier as well, and that is Odell Beckham and Curtis Samuel, two very, very different guys. Now, let me explain the reasoning to this. Odell at 8,100 is, I have him below Julio and Evans in terms of cash game viability just because he's on a new team, and I think that there's going to be, more competition for targets there, what with Jarvis Landry and Njoku, Higgins, even Nick Chubb, and also I don't expect there to be quite as much passing in the Browns game as I do with the Bucs and Falcons respectively. That being said, Odell is going to be matched up against Adoree Jackson or Malcolm Butler. He should torch either or both of those guys. I'm not too worried about Odell in this spot. I think he has a ton of upside. I just think that I might lean there more in GPPs. He's definitely expensive and just below the other two guys for me in terms of cash. Now, Curtis Samuel, 4,200, is the lowest priced guy at my wide receiver that I will consider for cash. I think that, it's pretty clear that him and DJ Moore are sort of a 1A, 1B situation in Carolina right now. I've talked multiple times in this video already about why I like the Panthers, but Samuel specifically is super explosive. He's been tearing up Panthers camp, and at 4,200, he's got to be in play. DJ Moore, who is in my next tier of guys, is 5,500, and I don't really understand the 1,300 price gap. That being said, I don't know if I would go to Curtis Samuel in cash games. I just don't know how much of, Curtis Samuel's, training camp and preseason hype is going to translate. He's not a guy that I'm all in on totally, but that being said, 4,200 for, a 1B and a high-scoring game at wide receiver, I think, is definitely, in contention. Samuel's just underpriced. That's really what it comes down to. If he were DJ Moore's price, I don't think I would consider him in cash, but at 4,200, it's just such a glaring misprice that, if you need value, you can plug him in. And a wide receiver is the best place to find value, I think, on DraftKings. Now, let's move on to my final tier of wide receivers. I've got 4 guys in this tier, and basically what this tier means to me are guys that I've played around with in my lineup, but that I don't really like that much. I probably won't play any of these guys, and on Sunday when I post my adjusted tiers at the end of the week, Sunday on Twitter, you can find that. I really think that most of these guys will be X'd off the list. DJ Moore, for the same reasons as Curtis Samuel, it's just his role to me is a little bit more secure in terms of being the 1A in this offense. So I would consider him. 5,500 is still very cheap. It's just not quite as cheap as Westbrook, who's a lock to me. And, if I'm at 5,500, I might just pay that extra 300 to go up to Boyd. Also in this tier, I've got Keenan Allen and Adam Thielen. Now, Thielen is 6,800. Stephon Diggs missed practice earlier this week. I'm not sure if he's going to play yet. We'll keep an eye on that. But, Thielen is a guy I'm really not big on. I think that he struggled down the stretch last year. Obviously, he had an amazing run to open the year with, I think, 800-yard games in a row. Then he had one more for the rest of the year. So, whether or not Thielen is, going to continue to be a top-tier guy or sort of a tier 2 guy, we'll find out. But I don't know. I think that the Vikings' primary objective is to run the ball, and I think pass volume could be down. We'll see. Thielen has a great matchup in the slot against the Falcons, so there's definitely that. He's in consideration for me, but just sort of, I don't know. Keenan Allen is 7,300. He's a target machine, reception machine, and I can see the Chargers especially passing more with the absence of Melvin Gordon. I would be happy to play Keenan Allen in almost any situation, especially on DraftKings where you get a full point per reception. I played with him. He actually fits into some of my favorite cash builds at 7,300, but I just don't know how excited I am to go there this week. I think that the Colts are not going to be that good with Jacoby Brissett, without Andrew Luck, all this drama. They could definitely collapse, especially, Brissett's biggest weakness is holding on to the ball too long. He could take a ton of sacks from this Chargers front, and we could just enter a situation where, Keenan is not getting the targets he needs to pay off value in this game. He is safe. He's just bad game script, in my opinion. The Chargers are going to be up. So looking at the last guy that I'm considering, Sterling Shepard, with Golden Tate missing 4 games, Odell Beckham gone. There's really only Sterling Shepard, Saquon, and Evan Ingram here. Sterling at 5K is underpriced, in my opinion, especially in PPR on DraftKings. Normally, I would consider him much higher on this list. I think that, if this were another week, he would be higher up in the Odell tier, maybe even higher potentially. But as I'll get into in a second, I already have another giant as a pure stone lock in cash games, Evan Ingram at tight end, who I'm about to talk about. And I just don't want 2 players in this Giants offense in my cash game. So, he is at the bottom of my wide receiver tiers, mostly because of roster construction and not so much because of the player himself. I do love Sterling Shepard this week. I think he's going to be overlooked. But, moving on to tight end here, I've got Evan Ingram in a tier of his own at 4,800. I mean, the reports are coming out. It's just hyping me up. I'm buying it fully. They're saying that Evan Ingram could lead this team in receiving. I absolutely expect that to happen. He is the best player on their offense besides Saquon Barkley. But, Evan Ingram at 4,800, he's wildly overpriced. I think by the end of the year, he's going to be priced up in the mid-6K range, the same as George Kittle and Zach Ertz. I view him as that type of player. He's going to take that leap. I'm almost sure of it. Obviously, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Zach Ertz are all in play as well. But, you're getting a player who is just so explosive, who could easily get 10 targets, who could get 100 yards potentially, and you're getting him sub 5K. He is a lock in my cash game lineups. So 4,800, he's in a tier of his own. In the second tier, I've got Travis Kelce in a tier of his own. 7,100, I think that he is the only player besides Ingram that I'm strongly considering for cash. I don't see myself moving off of Ingram whatsoever. Like I said, I view him as a lock. But Kelce, what can we say? Kelce's a beast. Is Boye going to shadow him? Maybe. I heard that is a possibility. But I'm just really not scared of Travis Kelce, in terms of any type of matchup. He's just so elite. And with Patrick Mahomes at QB, I think that you could lock him in and get those points if you want, just to spend that value there. And in my third tier, I've got George Kittle and Zach Ertz. I honestly don't see any need to really consider anybody besides these 4 tight ends in cash games this week. Some people are into Hunter Henry. That's going to be a pass for me. Kittle, 6,600. He really hasn't produced at that elite level with Jimmy G yet, so that is why he is below these other guys, although it should be a good environment for scoring. So, maybe I'm a little bit too low on Kittle. I think I'll focus on Kittle and GPPs, though, and let Ingram and or Kelce ride in cash. And Zach Ertz, same thing, 6,100. He stacks well with Carson Wentz, but I don't know. I think the Redskins are going to get blown out in this spot, and Zach Ertz could see reduced targets in week 1. Not to mention, Dallas Goedert could vulture him in terms of a tight end touchdown once we get down to the red zone. So it's Evan Ingram pretty much for me in cash this week. Travis Kelce in consideration, and those other 2 guys, I wouldn't fault you for playing them just because they're playable every single week in cash. And then moving on, finally, guys, DST here. We're going to close out the show. I've got 3 tiers, and my top tier consists of 3 home favorites. As you can tell, I'm pretty high on these 3 teams this week to smash. The Eagles at 3,600. The Redskins, the entire left side of their line is just horrific. I know they've got Eric Flowers there, and with Trent Williams gone, there's just really almost no hope for them to stop this Eagles front. I think that the Eagles are just going to smash, 3+ sacks, maybe a turnover. Love the Eagles at 3,600. The Browns, if you can't quite get up there, they're 200 cheaper. I talked about it. Their D-line should feast on the Titans, and same goes 3,100 with the Seahawks. With Clowney and Ansah playing, basically the Bengals have the messiest line in the league right now, and they could get destroyed. I think Seahawks are where I'm leaning, but any of these three home favorites have massive mismatches in terms of their D-line versus the opposing O-line. So I think that you could lock any of these three defenses in and feel pretty good about that in terms of cash games. Right below that, if you want to go for the upside plays and the leverage plays, these might be more GPP than cash, but the Ravens at 3,800 if you've got some extra salary. I mean, it's pretty evident the Dolphins are tanking. They traded Tunsil, and they had one of the worst lines, before they traded Tunsil. So the Ravens, that's an incredible spot. There might not be a better bet for a defensive touchdown on the board than the Ravens. It's just 3,800 for a defense. It's a big ask, but I would not fault you for going there. It's just they're away. Typically I don't play road defenses, in cash games, which is the same reason that I've got the Lions in this tier at 2,900, just below the three home guys. The Lions also on the road, I think, are in a great matchup. The offensive line of the Cardinals is pretty terrible, and with all the effort that the Lions put into bolstering their D-line, hopefully that will pay off for them. And we'll see how that goes this week. But at 2,900, they are kind of my cheap option that I'm looking at. I like to pay down usually at defense. Again, the salary is not so much of a concern this week, so you can pretty easily spend up to that top tier of defense for cash. But the Lions, I think, have just a huge mismatch in terms of defensive line versus the Cardinals O-line, and it correlates well with Kerryon Johnson if you opt to go that way. Now, the last dart throw I've got on here is the Dolphins. It's weird to have the Dolphins and the Ravens on there, but I'm really not buying into Lamar Jackson. I think that out of every quarterback in the NFL, Lamar Jackson probably has the highest upside to fumble, which could be a defensive touchdown for the Dolphins. And at 2,100, a touchdown's basically 4Xing for you, a sack and a touchdown. So just in terms of the numbers, I think the Dolphins are a viable play. If you don't believe in Lamar Jackson, they're at home, they're 2,100, and could very easily 4X with one play. Bad pass by Lamar, which is I would say likely several bad passes we're going to see from Lamar Jackson and maybe a fumble. But yeah, guys, that is what I've got for you this week. I hope this video was good. This is the first one of this series that I've done. If you have any critiques, anything you think I could improve upon, different format you want to see, please let me know. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Ben Hover. I'm going to post an adjusted cash tiers on Sunday morning. I think that'll look like a full picture of all of these tiers, and they'll be readjusted. Some names will be crossed off. Maybe a new name will be added on. So make sure you guys follow me on Twitter to get that exclusive content that will not be on YouTube. And yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the DFS Dose podcast, which I host, if you would like to hear more thoughts on this slate from me, specifically GPP thoughts, which I didn't really cover in this video. Thanks for watching, guys, and let's make some money this week, all right? I'll see you next week on Thursday.